Well, family business is often more than just an asset, right? It's a legacy, and you want to leave that for your family. But we want to talk about the different scenarios that pop up and the different legal and practical issues of transferring ownership of a family business through an estate plan. There's a lot to work through. We'll talk about the options coming up next. Welcome in. This is Complete Estate Planning. Glad to have you here. If you haven't subscribed to us, please do so. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks for being here. Please hit subscribe as well. We'd appreciate that support. And if you have any questions for Nick, log on CincinnatiEstatePlan.com. What's going on, Nick?
Oh, happy Friday. We are getting into, I think we're finally into the hot season.
Yeah, no doubt.
Which, and hopefully the hot season without too much rain, because we've been, rain. And it's funny because, my son, just keeps getting mad. And when can we golf? I've trained him so well. Like it's,
You're doing a good job.
Even if I don't turn out to be a good parent, neither of my kids turn out to be good. That's the one good thing. Actually, not Mother's Day weekend, but the weekend before, it was crappy weather on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And so what I ended up doing is we have we got like a portable hitting net from Walmart that, works for baseball and golf. And it's like a little, kind of U-shaped thing. And I pulled the cars out of the garage, moved some stuff around, put it in there, with a little piece of turf. And, my son, I'll bet at least 3 hours a day was in there just
That's awesome.
Just hitting balls.
Just getting a kid to do anything for 3 hours a day that's productive is rare. So
that's all he wanted to do. And that was because we had to drag him and say, get in here. It's time for nap or it's time for dinner. Yeah. So, of course, the conversation devolved into, well, what if we just set up a golf simulator in the garage? What if we got one of the impact mats
You got to ride this.
Yeah, and had a projector screen kind of come down, and then you got to get a launch monitor. Of course, you need one that's accurate. Like if you're going to do all of this and get bad data, what's the point? Yeah, exactly. If you're going to do it, go all out and
for the kids, of course.
for the kids. That's right. And then
Merry Christmas. We got you a golf simulator.
I know. And then the worst part about all of it, you know how it is. You Google one thing, and now my phone, my Amazon account, my computer, all it is launch monitors and projector screens. So they found us. And that's all it's doing is, Amazon and all the ads are infiltrating. Yep. So TrackMan and, Garmin and all the different ones, they're all after me right now. And, I'll be honest with you, I don't bother anyone, but if my son keeps begging and asking for, a golf simulator, I don't tell him to be quiet. I don't stop it. So
you better be careful. You might have some clients try to stop by as well and hit a few golf balls depending on what you pick up.
No, that's fine. I wish we could do something in the office. That was kind of my joke. We could have a golf room here in the office, which we definitely don't have the ceilings, and then I would never get any work done.
Yeah.
Although hopefully, we are getting to the point where the weather breaks enough where we can just go outside. So we are close.
It's good to have options.
Yeah, absolutely. But
again, for the kids, of course.
Of course. It's nothing to do with me. I don't even think I'll use it. I don't even like this. No.
You got to make sure it works, right? Make sure it works.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's all of course.
Yeah. Well, let's jump in, Nick, to today's conversation. Passing on a family business. And I'm sure this is a complicated one. No matter, even if your family gets along, even if, your family's involved in the business right now, I'm sure it can get complicated when you're trying to pass it on and everybody's trying to figure out what's the next step. So as we get into this, and we're going to talk about some options here, but I guess the first thing is really trying to figure out who wants to be involved and who doesn't, right? I mean, I think that's one of the first steps when you're passing it on.
Yes, and actually, let me back up here.
Okay.
There's a little bit of context that goes with this. I am specifically referring to businesses that have some financial value.
Right.
Because I've had some people, and I don't mean this in a derogatory term, but people who, are kind of in certain service businesses, or they're kind of sales or commission, and it is just the whole value of the business is that person's own work. Where they pass away, the business is worthless without them, so to speak. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about one where there's financial value even after you pass away. And it doesn't just go away. And then obviously that means we have to do something about it. It is inheritable, if you will. So yeah, obviously, assuming that is the case, again, I know backing up here, but just to give some context, the first thing is who has any interest in staying involved in the business or becoming an owner, and who wants nothing to do with it. So, you'll look at a couple things. One, is it a specialized business that requires a certain expertise, set of skills, licensing? A lot of times, like if, my law office, if I have two kids, one of them's a lawyer, one of them's not, well, that self eliminates rather easily, right? Obviously, where that's going to go.
Yeah.
And that's one thing. But if you have something where multiple people could theoretically benefit from it or own it or even sell it, even if it's something where we're just going to sell it, everyone can get some money out of it. But a lot of times you look at if any of the family members are involved in the business. So oftentimes with family business, some of the kids, some of the siblings, whomever may be working in the business. And then you may have other people who don't, who are in a totally different career field. So there's good and bad with that, right? Because if you have people who work in the business, they are better positioned to pick up the baton and run with it, keep things running, have some sort of expertise in what to do, versus no one has a clue what to do. Where do we start? This business is worthless. So that's something you need to be really careful about. And you also need to be careful about the expectations, because you may have people who, are working and feel like they have some loyalty or sweat equity, or even if they're not an owner, they feel like it already should go to them. So maybe they just expect, well, I'm the only one who's working in the company. Surely I'm going to get the company, and surely I'm going to be in charge. And a lot of times they will feel like they should get extra because of that, and they may be entitled to that if that was part of the deal. But you also need to make sure you're not screwing up or making an unequal inheritance plan for no reason. And then on the flip side, you'll have people who aren't involved, and maybe they say, I don't want to be tied down to the day-to-day operation of the business. Like I will give you a perfect example. I know a lot of people are, and I guess HGTV glorifies this right now, are big into rental properties. They like to be a landlord. They have real estate. And if you watch HGTV, you buy a house for 50,000, you put 50,000 into it, and then you sell it for 8 million, right? The things are out there. It's so easy. It's so much money. And you know how the show goes. You can renovate the house in 45 minutes before the end of the
Right.
show.
Right.
It's so easy. I don't have any, but I don't have any interest in it. I don't want to be a landlord. I don't want to get called at 2:00 in the morning when the pilot light goes out. And I don't want to have to go after people when they stiff me in rent. So if my parents had a bunch of rental properties, I would not want to, basically have them hand it in my lap and say, hey, Nick, you and your siblings now have to be property managers together. Not my cup of tea. I would say, I want out, give me my cash, and call it a day. So again, it's always industry and people specific. And then obviously, where the problems can go here. If there's decision making or control or voting rights, whoever is in the business is going to be mad if they don't get control. And who's ever out of the business is going to be mad if the one who's in the business gets preferential treatment. And then also, you need to be careful, like if people feel left out. Because I will say this, I want nothing to do with rental properties. But if my parents had 10 rental properties, gave them all to my brother or my sister, and I got nothing, even though I have no interest in them, I would still feel like I got shortchanged as far as the inheritance. I would say, just because this is not what I want to do with my nest egg, I don't think that justifies shortchanging my inheritance. Okay, so you got to be careful. And Ben, we'll go over a couple options here, but you will see there's going to be no perfect option. A lot of these are going to have pros and cons, and which of these works as a B plus, because I doubt any of these are going to have A pluses. Okay, so yeah, those are things you need to watch out for. But obviously, the first thing is who's in, who's out, who may be interested in it, who has no interest in it. Or are there people who cannot be involved? Like if I have one child who's a lawyer and one who's not, the one who's not a lawyer can't be an owner of my law office.
Yeah.
So again, you first got to find out who's going to be on each side of the aisle. And again, we'll get into this in a second, but this is where the hard part really begins. Actually coming up with the list of the people involved is somehow the easy part of this.
Okay. Well, let's talk through the options. And I know we have a few to talk through. Option one, I guess, if you want to leave it to one beneficiary, but also make sure everybody else is taken care of.
Well, right. Yeah. So obviously if it is, I have one child who wants the law office and the other one doesn't, the easiest thing to do is say Johnny gets the business or Sally gets the rental properties. That can be very easy. The hard thing to do at that point is equalizing or keeping the overall inheritance fair for everyone else. If the rental properties are worth $1 million and I'm giving the rental properties to Sally, I better have $1 million in other assets to give over here to Johnny, unless I'm trying to basically disinherit him or give him less. So you need to be careful there and make sure that whether it's real estate, investments, cash, insurance, make sure that the inheritance amount is the same. So even if one person gets the business and one gets cash, we don't have one person who's getting $1 million inheritance and the other one gets nothing because they just happen to not have an interest in rental properties. I think in a lot of instances that's fairly harsh. Obviously, you can run into big problems here, Ben, if there's not enough cash or other assets to do that. So if the business is a high value financially, and it is a disproportionately large percentage of the estate, if the whole nest egg is worth $1 million and the business is worth $750,000, how are you going to do 50-50? You can't. So a lot of times it can't be possible. And then the other time is business valuation. How do you put a value on what that business is? And look, they have professionals who can appraise things. They have specialists who can appraise different types of industries. But I'll tell you, a lot of people, have false ideas of what the business is worth, on both sides of the aisle. So a lot of times, even if there's not a true imbalance, someone will say, I gave up too much money to get the business. They value the business way higher than it should be. Or the person who's on the outs will say, that was a ripoff. They acted like the business wasn't worth anything. And I should have got more money for it. So even if it's not a real imbalance, the perception there ends up, kind of having people butt heads. Okay, so you have to be careful. I will say, when you can just pass the business down to a single person, from the business standpoint, it's way cleaner, right? Because you don't have management by committee. And if you have the cash to do it to where everyone can still get their share, that's the best case scenario. Not always possible, but if we can pull that off, that's always my first go-to.
Gotcha. Okay. Option one. Then option two, co-ownership, which I guess can get kind of tricky, and I'm sure there are plenty of risks involved.
Well, kind of tricky is the understatement of the year.
Well, you're a great attorney, so I figure for you, it's fairly straightforward.
I mean, I can put the plan in place, but I can't guarantee the kids aren't going to, fight each other at Thanksgiving. Yeah. Obviously, you need to be careful. The more hands in the cookie jar, right? The more difficult this can be, and a lot of it depends on the relationship between the family members and the nature of the business. So if this is something where it is very passive, kind of set it and forget it. We have a bunch of rental properties. They're all rented. We have a property management company. All you have to do is collect a rent check every month. You can split the rent check in half, right? That's fairly easy to do. But when there's decisions to be made, that's when, too many hands in the cookie jar can be a problem. And especially if you have some people who are involved in the day-to-day and some who aren't. Okay, so if you have the lawyer and the non-lawyer fighting over a decision for how the law office is going to run, that's going to be a problem. And a lot of times, the first time there's a problem, the business will be crippled or will be paralyzed because there's 5 siblings and we can't have anything where all 5 of them agree. So no decision ever gets made. And then people will get mad. They will want, they won't want to be attached at the hip or in business with their siblings. And then they'll be, they may not agree on what they want to get out of the business. There's some people who say, well, let's put some money into this rental property, and then long term we can make a lot more. And there's other people who say, I don't want to put money into it. Let's just get the cash we can get now and call it a day. So if you have to do it this way, if you're going to have inheritance or ownership of a business by committee, the best thing you can do is come up with all or most of the what ifs right now. Come up with if one of them wants out, how do they sell? Who can they sell to? Buyout provisions. What do we do if there is a disagreement? Is it a 2/3 majority? How are decisions made when it's not unanimous? Okay, so putting all of the what ifs and anticipating fights that haven't happened yet, but probably will. And again, Ben, they're fairly easy to anticipate. Okay, it's all going to be they don't agree on what to do here, or someone wants out and they disagree on how much they should be paid, or someone wants out and the other person doesn't want to buy them out. Okay, yeah. So again, just have the instructions, or if this happens, here is how the problem is dealt with. Okay. That's the best way to go about it. So at least there are rules in place for every scenario.
And the third option, again, buyout agreements. You kind of started to touch on this a little bit, but this would be the third option for you, right?
Yeah. So this would be like proactively doing what I just talked about, where instead of saying, if there are problems or if someone wants out, here's what we do about it. This is if you have a certainty of, my dad, if he had a bunch of rental properties, he would have certainty that I don't want to be involved in the rental properties. So the conversation is different than saying, well, if the 3 kids don't agree on something and someone wants out, here's what we do. It's Nick is going to want out. Here's how we go about that. And, a lot of it is really based on, is there enough money or is there enough cash to cover all of this. Again, that kind of gets back to earlier. If there's enough cash where I can get my third of the value and I can just take money, I'll let my siblings do whatever they want with the rental properties. But if they say, Nick, there's not enough money to buy you out and you're stuck with us, I'm not happy. And Ben, you probably wouldn't either. Like if you want to be in business with your family, that's fine. But you don't want to be forced to be stuck in business with family members if that's not something you have an interest in. And I will say this, if there's not enough cash, loans or my siblings having to give me installment payouts over the next 10 years, that's not good. Okay, so you want to get the payoff as soon as possible. Typically, really the best thing is to come up with some sort of way to find the cash to get people out, one way or the other. And then also it's a good idea so we don't have to worry about, we don't argue about the value. Because if I want out, I'm obviously going to say the business is worth 20 million, so give me my, 6 or 7 million. And then my siblings are going to say, no, the business isn't worth nearly that. We'll give you half of that. So obviously the other piece of this is set the rules early. Like I would have the clients say, when they pass away, here is how the business will be valued if anyone wants out. So again, there's ways to do it. I think the more certainty you have up front, the better. And that's one of the things, Ben, I talk to my clients. I say, look, you guys drop dead tomorrow. Does anyone want the business? Who's interested in this? Who wants nothing to do with it? And if they say, I don't know, I say, well, before our next meeting, I want you to talk to them. Because we don't know what the kids will want makes it really tough. If you say there's 4 kids, one of them wants the business, the other 3 just want their cash. Now at least I know what problems we have to solve.
Right.
Okay. So the more upfront and the less surprise, the better. Now, Ben, obviously this is where you can't rely on the lawyer to know what the family and the kids want and the family dynamic. You have to rely on the client to talk to the family and kind of give some backstory and some context with this. So I sometimes I have homework for people, Ben. It's just the way it is. But so that's the other piece here. You got to be really, really careful about. The more certainty we have on the front end and the more cash we have to spread around, obviously the better. But if we do not have enough cash to spread out among everyone, then we at least know what problems we have to solve.
Very good. I guess the last piece of this, Nick, before we wrap up, is just the valuation, right? If the business is by far the most valuable asset in your estate, it can make things a little more difficult.
Yes, if there's no balance.
Okay.
So if my whole net worth, so if my dad is worth $1 million, 800,000 of it is the rental properties, and I'm supposed to get a third of it, there's only 200,000 in cash. There's not enough cash to pay me out. Okay. That's a big problem. And then also, basically you have to divide up the business or dilute the business. And sometimes that's okay, but now you have management by committee. That can make things harder to get done. Obviously, it's good to have a good valuation process, bring in a professional so you don't have the biased kids saying the house is only worth, the rental properties are only worth $10 or they're worth 10 million.
Yeah.
And then, there's things that you can do here. You just need to come up with, here's how all of this is going to go up front. And then one thing you can do, if you don't have enough cash up front, really the only thing you can do is maybe give the other beneficiaries, maybe if you don't give them control, but you give them like an income interest, like they get 10% of the, of the income. So they have like think of it like shares of stock in a company. So they get the ownership benefit, but maybe the one person who is the lawyer or the one person who is the property manager, they make all the decisions. Okay, you can have ownership or financial benefit be different than who's in control. And I would say it would be a little different, still not great if it was, well, Nick, you have to be tied at the hip and you are becoming a landlord here for the next few years. You get your income, you get a third of the profits because you own a third of it, but your brother, who is the real estate tycoon, he's in charge of all of it. Mm-hmm. So there's not all three of us are getting together, which of these tenants should we pick, which of the property managing companies. You can make it to where all three of you get your financial benefit, but the right person who knows what they're talking about is in charge.
Gotcha.
And again, it's not perfect, Ben. Because if I say, I don't care, I just want my cash, there may not be a good option. Okay. So again, it's not perfect if you don't have enough cash to spread around. And then obviously, Ben, this leads into the last thing, having a conversation early, less surprises is better. I will say a lot of problems happen when someone passes away and then the kids just now realize they're stuck together in a situation they don't like. The family has a discussion up front. If my dad came to me and said, hey, here's the way I set this up. I want the properties to stay. I want the business to continue. And here's who I've picked to be in charge. Here's why. And here's what I'm doing as far as who's allowed in, who's allowed out. And how all of that works. If you have that up front, then at least I know what's coming. Right. So again, over communicating and communicating ahead of time is really the right answer.
Yep.
If you can do it, if you're comfortable with it.
Yeah.
But the more transparent, the better.
Well, a lot to sort through. And again, this is, I think, kind of details the process. I think there's a lot of great information. Again, if you want to have a conversation with Nick, who's an estate planning attorney who does this with business owners, please don't hesitate to reach out. CincinnatiEstatePlan.com. Any questions about what we talked about, please give us a call, 513-463-6789, or you can leave a comment on YouTube. We'll check that out as well, but please subscribe wherever you listen. Nick, great breakdown and very thorough and good information here for anyone that is in this position and knows it's a little bit touchy for the family, but I think with these options, a lot of things to think through.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I know we're going down the rabbit hole on some of this, but figure all of the what ifs out now so you can decide how you want your family to be taken care of as opposed to leaving it up to chance and just hoping that they don't fight about it later. So again, proactive approach, which I think is a theme for all of this. So it's all solvable, but the more that can be done on the front end, the better.
All right, very good. Well, thanks for watching another episode of Complete Estate Planning. We'll have another one coming soon. Please subscribe and talk to you then.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by estate planning? The process can seem complex, but it doesn't have to be. The Rosenbauer Law Office is dedicated to helping you protect what matters most: your family, your assets, and your peace of mind. Nick and the team will guide you through every step of the process, making sure you feel confident and informed along the way. Take the first step toward peace of mind today. Schedule an introductory call by clicking the link in the description of today's show.
This show is for informational purposes only and does not provide any legal advice. Information on this show may not constitute the most up-to-date legal information. Please do not act or refrain from acting based solely on anything you hear on this show. This show does not form any attorney-client relationship with the Rosenbauer Law Office, LLC. Please seek the counsel of a qualified attorney before addressing your own estate planning needs.